Before a single word comes out of your mouth, a woman has already formed a quiet impression of you. Not because she is judging you, but because humans are built to read each other this way. The way you breathe, the way your shoulders sit, the way your eyes rest on a person rather than dart away, the pace at which you move through a room, the steadiness of your voice when you finally do speak. These signals arrive before language does. They tell her whether you are comfortable inside your own skin or whether you are trying to escape it. And that single observation shapes almost everything that follows. Most men, when they realize this, panic. They think the fix is to learn better lines. They think charm can be memorized. They spend evenings rehearsing clever openers, watching videos about witty banter, collecting phrases that supposedly make women laugh. And none of it works for long because the problem was never the words. The problem was the tension behind them. A man who is calm has nothing to prove. A man who is desperate to impress is constantly announcing himself. Women feel the difference immediately, even when they cannot explain it in words. Real communication begins long before the first sentence. It begins with how you inhabit a space. Stand as though you have nowhere more important to be. Breathe as though the moment is not weighing on you. Look at her as though looking is a pleasure, not a test. Smile slowly. Speak at the speed you actually think, not at double speed because you are afraid of silence. When you slow down, everything else slows down with you. Your voice steadies. Your thoughts arrive on time. Her nervous system relaxes because nervous systems always synchronize with the people they are close to. This is the part that almost no one tells you. A conversation is not just two people exchanging words. It is two nervous systems in a shared room. The calmer yours becomes, the safer she feels. And when she feels safe, she does not need you to be impressive. She only needs you to be present. And once you get to feel present inside your own body, the next layer of the work begins to show up, learning how to actually open the conversation so it feels like a beginning rather than an audition. Walking up to a woman you find attractive is rarely the disaster people imagine. The disaster is everything that happens in the 3 seconds before you open your mouth. The mental reel begins. What if she has a boyfriend? What if she is not interested? What if I say something stupid? What if she laughs at me? By the time you finally speak, you are already defending yourself against outcomes that have not happened yet. And that defensive posture leaks straight into your tone, your posture, your eye contact, your smile. Even a beautiful sentence delivered from that place lands flat. What works is simpler than any of that. Walk up, pause for half a beat, look at her face as though you actually want to see it. Then say something honest and small, not clever, not rehearsed. Something as plain as, "Hi, I had to come say hello. You looked like someone worth interrupting my evening for." That is not magic. It is just real. She can feel the difference between a man who is performing an opener and a man who is simply making contact. One asks for her attention. The other assumes he is welcome to offer it. The first sentence is not meant to impress. It is meant to land. It is meant to feel like the start of a real exchange, not the warm-up act of a sales pitch. And after that small, honest sentence, your only job is to notice her response. Did her shoulders open up? Did her eyes stay on yours? Did she smile in a way that invited more, or in a way that closed? Not every reaction is an invitation, but every reaction is information. You will never go wrong by treating it as information and not as a verdict. One of the most common mistakes is making the opening line carry the entire weight of the moment. Men often believe that if the first sentence is not extraordinary, the conversation is already dead. That belief is the actual problem. The first sentence is just a door. What matters is everything you do once the door is open. You walked up, you spoke. She responded. Now the real conversation can begin. And once that opening lands without panic, the next skill quietly reveals itself. How to keep the exchange alive once it has begun, so it does not fade into the polite small talk that everyone has learned to dread. Keeping a conversation alive is not about filling silence. It is about being interested. Most people wait their turn to speak. They politely nod, they say, really, and oh, wow, at the right places. And inside they are rehearsing their next line. This is the death of every conversation worth having. The woman across from you can sense almost instantly whether you are actually receiving her words or merely waiting for yours to come back out. And when she feels she is being heard, something opens in her that no technique could have opened. The mechanics of this are simpler than they sound. When she tells you about her week, do not leap in with your own. Let the details she shared sit between you for a moment. Then ask something that grew out of what she actually said. Not a question that came from a list. Not, what do you do, repeated for the 15th time. A real follow-up. Something that proves you were listening. What was the hardest part of that? What did you enjoy most about it? What made you decide that way? The kind of question that says, I am not just here to be heard. I am actually here to hear you. And then, just as important, you have to share. A conversation where one person is interviewed feels extractive, even when both people are smiling. You do not need to match her story with one of your own in every exchange. But the rhythm of any real conversation moves in two directions. She gives a piece of herself, you receive it. Then you offer a piece of yourself, she receives that. Then she offers more because she felt safe offering the first piece. This is how depth happens, not through big confessions, through small exchanges, honestly reciprocated over the course of minutes. You will discover something counterintuitive as you do this. The more genuinely interested you are, the less effort the conversation takes. Because interest is a renewable energy. As long as you actually want to know her, the words keep finding their way out. The work is not in speaking. The work is in being present enough that you know what to say. Pacing matters more than people realize. Rushing through a conversation tells her you are trying to get somewhere. Slowing down tells her you are already there. Leave a pause after she finishes a thought. Leave a pause before you begin yours. Do not let the air fill with filler words because silence feels expensive. Silence is not empty. Silence is the space where real things have time to arrive. Comfortable pauses make people feel held. Uncomfortable pauses make people perform. And once you can hold a rhythm like that, without grasping for the next sentence, the next layer of the work begins to surface. Learning how to introduce yourself honestly without turning the conversation into a rare summe. So she meets the actual you and not a polished version you imagined she would prefer. A lot of men, when they are nervous, become press agents for themselves. They drop in achievements the way someone drops pins on a map. Where they have traveled, what they earn, where they studied, which car they drive, which languages they speak. Each detail sounds impressive in isolation. Together, they create a wall. She is no longer talking to a person. She is reading a profile. The point of telling her about your life is not to advertise it. The point is to let her see how you think. Share the story behind the thing, not just the thing itself. Do not say, I went to Tokyo last year. Say, I went to Tokyo last year and stood in a tiny ramen shop at midnight where the chef told me the broth takes 14 hours, and I had this strange feeling that I had been hurrying through my whole life and didn't know how to stop. Now she knows something about you that no RA some can hold. And she knows you pay attention. She knows you have an inner life. She knows you notice things. Vulnerability is not weakness. Carefully chosen vulnerability is intimacy offered before it has been earned, and that is what makes it powerful. You do not announce every wound. You share one piece of honest human detail, a fear, a habit, a small confession, a gentle admission, and watch how she receives it. If she leans toward it, the door opens wider. If she recoils, respect that too. Vulnerability is an offering, not an obligation. One of the things a lot of men get wrong is that they believe they have to seem more interesting than they actually are. The opposite is closer to the truth. Be the person who notices more than average. Be the person who notices more about his own life than average. That by itself is already more interesting than someone reciting a list of places they have been. And once you can share yourself in that honest, unhurried way, and the next thing the work asks of you is to learn how to read what is happening between you without becoming obsessed with reading it. How to notice genuine interest without losing your composure in the process. Every woman has a different way of showing that a conversation is landing. Some laugh more. Some ask longer questions. Some move closer. Some grow quieter, not because they are bored, but because they are paying closer attention. Some tease you lightly. Some start adding personal details unprompted. None of these signals are universal, and trying to memorize a translation chart for female behavior is the fastest way to misinterpret half of what you see. What you can rely on is the pattern, not the moment. One smile is not a declaration. One long answer is not a promise. One teasing remark is not an invitation. But if the smiles keep coming, if her answers keep growing, if the distance between you keeps shrinking in small, unconscious ways, if she begins asking questions back, if she begins to remember what you said earlier and bring it up later, if she begins to invest energy into keeping the conversation going rather than letting you do all the work, those are not signals to decode. They are the texture of genuine interest. You feel it before you can name it. And here is the harder part. If that texture is not there, you have to be able to let it go, not because you are giving up, because you are paying attention, because she does not owe you interest simply because you have offered yours, because chasing someone who is not leaning in does not create leaning in. It creates politeness, guilt, discomfort, and sometimes resentment. None of those things turn into attraction later. They turn into avoidance. This is where most men fail themselves. They confuse the early stages of interest with a verdict. They treat one conversation as a final exam. They get attached to outcomes that have not arrived yet, and they begin interpreting every micro expression as though they were reading a courtroom transcript. None of that helps. The skill is not in reading her. The skill is in staying inside yourself while you are near her. A confident man does not study a woman like a specimen. He enjoys being near her. If she enjoys it too, the evening grows. If she does not, He finishes the conversation with warmth and walks away without bitterness. Both outcomes are survivable. Both outcomes leave his dignity intact. That is the actual skill. And once you can read the room without living inside it, the next layer of the work begins to unfold, learning how to create a little warmth between you, a little spark, an ease that feels different from every other conversation she had this week without manufacturing it through tricks. There is a version of charm that feels forced. A man who jokes constantly. A man who tests her by pretending not to care. A man who plays hot and cold to keep her guessing. A man who compliments her in a way that feels rehearsed. All of this can produce a brief electrical charge. None of it produces trust, and attraction without trust fades by the morning. What actually creates warmth is far quieter. It is the playful moment that arises naturally because you both happened to be amused by the same thing. It is the comment that lands because you were actually paying attention. It is the compliment offered with no expectation of return. I really like the way you think about that. Your laugh changes the temperature of the room. You are more interesting than you are letting on. These are not pickup lines. They are observations made in the moment by a man who noticed something and decided to name it. Healthy flirtation has almost nothing to do with the words themselves. It is about the temperature you are both living in, a slight teasing tone, a shared private joke that arrives halfway through the conversation, a smile that lasts one beat longer than it needs to, a moment where your eyes meet and neither of you looks away first, and something is acknowledged that does not need to be said. None of this can be planned. All of it becomes possible when you are present, attentive, and at ease. Do not try to escalate too quickly. Do not try to turn a nice conversation into something physical before the comfort between you has built its own foundation. Pressure is the enemy of attraction. A woman who feels she can relax will lean in on her own. A woman who feels she is being managed will start looking for the door. The work is not to push the night forward. The work is to make the moment you are already in worth staying in. And once that warmth is allowed to develop on its own time, the deepest test of the work appears, learning how to move forward without losing yourself and how to step back without leaving your dignity behind. This is where most men quietly break. They confuse pursuit with insistence. They confuse interest with entitlement. They believe that if they just say the right thing one more time, ask one more question, send one more message, suggest one more meet up, eventually the answer they want will arrive. Almost always it does not. What arrives instead is a quiet withdrawal from her side, a growing sense of pressure that she never wanted, and a man who cannot understand why the more effort he puts in, the further away everything seems. The truth is brutally simple. You can only want someone as much as the space between you allows. The moment you start chasing, the space disappears. The moment the space disappears, so does the possibility of meeting her as equals. And nothing attractive survives long inside an unequal dynamic. A man who is grounded knows how to express interest once he says it, he means it. Then he waits. He does not double text to fill the silence she has not filled. He does not send a longer message because hers was short. He does not interpret her busy day as rejection. He does not manufacture a crisis to manufacture closeness. He simply lets the time between them reveal what it is revealing. Often that time tells him she is interested. Sometimes that time tells him she is not. Either way, he was not destroyed by the answer. Walking away gracefully is one of the most underrated skills a man can develop. Not walking away in anger, not walking away to make a point, not walking away to prove he does not care, walking away because he heard what was said, accepted it, and chose not to fight reality. There is a deep composure in that. It makes every future conversation easier because it tells the people around him that his emotional life does not collapse when someone says no. The alternative is a man who begs, argues, persuades, makes promises, or punishes. That man might occasionally get the outcome he wanted, but the cost of what he became in the process can never be recovered. No relationship has ever been saved by the thing a man did after being told no the first time. And once you have learned how to walk towards someone you want without running them over, and how to walk away from someone who is not leaning in without burning the bridge behind you, and the deepest layer of all begins, building the life that makes all of this effortless, so your confidence no longer depends on how tonight goes. This is the part almost nobody wants to hear because it sounds slow, unglamorous, and entirely unrelated to dating. But it is the only part that lasts. Your confidence in conversation is a reflection of your life outside conversation. A man who has goals he is pursuing, friendships he tends, skills he is developing, a body he is taking care of, a mind he is feeding, and a reason to wake up excited. That man does not need a woman to validate his evening. He would like her company. He would enjoy getting to know her, but his good mood is not held hostage by her answer, and that single fact changes everything about how he speaks, how he moves, and how he is received. The men who chase the hardest are usually the men with the least happening inside themselves. Not because they are bad people, because attention has become their main source of warmth. And when one source becomes your entire emotional economy, losing it feels catastrophic. So every conversation becomes the test. Every response becomes a verdict. Every delay becomes a threat. That is not attraction. That is dependency dressed up as desire. The fix is not a better line. The fix is a fuller life. Develop a craft. Read more than you used to. Take care of your health so you are not quietly ashamed of your body every time you take your shirt off at the pool. Cultivate friendships that are not contingent on romance falling apart. Travel when you can. Save some money. Learn to be alone without becoming lonely. Become the kind of man you would actually want to spend an evening with. Once you have done that, dating becomes one thread in a much larger tapestry, not the entire fabric you are hanging by. And here is what happens next without you forcing it. You stop trying to be interesting because you are interesting. You stop rehearsing because you actually have things to say. You stop overanalyzing her replies because your sense of self does not depend on them. You start listening more carefully because you are curious, not desperate. You start speaking more honestly because you have nothing to protect. You start telling smaller, truer stories because you have stopped trying to keep up with the version of yourself you imagined she wanted. And that is the version of you that will actually land. Not the polished version, not the performed version, not the version that learned 47 opening lines from a teacher on the internet. The actual one, the one who arrived at this conversation with a full life behind him and a quiet mind inside him, and the simple wish to know whether the two of you genuinely enjoy each other's company. So stop asking what you should say. Start asking what kind of life you are building. because the quality of every conversation you will ever have is just a mirror of the person holding it. And if the person holding it is grounded, curious, honest, kind, patient, decent, and at peace with himself, no line in the world could improve what he is about to offer her. That is the whole work, not a collection of techniques. A slow, honest, unglamorous transformation into someone worth talking to. Every other skill is downstream of that one.